I asked ChatGPT to imagine a story where a modern civil war erupts in the US following Kamala Harris's victory in the 2024 presidential election. Stay tuned to find out how Chapter 4 unfolds. April 2025, the human toll of the conflict was devastating. By April 2025, tens of thousands of Americans had been killed, and millions more were displaced. Refugee camps sprang up along state borders, filled with people fleeing the violence. The healthcare system was overwhelmed, unable to cope with the influx of wounded soldiers and civilians. Families were torn apart as loved ones took up arms on opposing sides. Brothers fought against brothers, neighbors turned against each other, and communities were ripped apart by the violence. The social fabric of the nation, once so strong, was now in tatters. The psychological impact of the war was profound. People lived in constant fear, unsure if they would survive the next day. Children who had once known only peace were now growing up in a world of chaos and violence. The trauma of the war would leave deep scars on the American psyche, scars that would take generations to heal. May 2025, the global impact of the Civil War in the United States had far-reaching global consequences. As the conflict raged on, the international community was drawn into the fray. Some countries provided military aid to the Union of Progressive States, while others sent weapons and supplies to the Heartland Confederation. The war threatened to spill over into neighboring countries, destabilizing the entire region. The global economy was also affected. With the United States in turmoil, global markets were thrown into chaos. The price of oil skyrocketed, and trade routes were disrupted, leading to shortages and inflation worldwide. The conflict in America had become a global crisis, with no end in sight. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter as this story continues to unfold. June 2025, a glimmer of hope. By June 2025, the war had reached a stalemate. Neither side was able to gain a decisive advantage, and the toll of the conflict was becoming unbearable. In an effort to end the violence, a group of bipartisan leaders from both factions began to meet in secret, hoping to negotiate a ceasefire. These talks were fraught with tension, as neither side trusted the other. But as the weeks went on, a glimmer of hope began to emerge. The leaders realized that continuing the war would only lead to the complete destruction of the nation. Slowly, a framework for peace began to take shape. July 2025, the peace agreement. In July 2025, after months of negotiation, a peace agreement was finally reached. The agreement called for a ceasefire, the withdrawal of all armed forces, and the establishment of a transitional government. It was a fragile peace, but it was the only way to prevent further bloodshed. Under the terms of the agreement, the United States would be restructured into a federation of autonomous regions, each with its own government. The federal government would be reduced in power, with most authority devolved to the regional governments. It was a compromise that satisfied neither side fully, but it was the only way to hold the nation together. August 2025, rebuilding a nation. With the peace agreement in place, the difficult task of rebuilding the nation began. The scars of the war were everywhere, from the physical destruction of cities to the deep divisions between Americans. But there was also a sense of relief, a sense that the worst was finally over. Rebuilding efforts began in earnest. Cities were reconstructed, infrastructure was repaired, and displaced people were resettled. The economy slowly began to recover, and international aid poured in to help the nation rebuild. But the process of healing was slow. The wounds of the war ran deep, and it would take years, if not decades, for the nation to fully recover. The divisions that had led to the war were still present, and there was a lingering sense of mistrust between the different factions. September 2025, a new beginning. By September 2025, the United States was a changed nation. The war had left its mark, but there was also a sense of renewal. The nation had come through a dark period and emerged on the other side, scarred but still standing. The new federal structure allowed for greater autonomy and self-governance, addressing some of the issues that had led to the conflict. There was a new emphasis on dialogue, compromise, and cooperation, as Americans realized that the only way forward was together. The Second American Civil War was a tragic chapter in the nation's history, but it also served as a reminder of the resilience of the American people. Despite the divisions, despite the violence, the nation had found a way to come together and rebuild. It was a new beginning, a chance to learn from the past and build a better future for all. The Second Civil War left the United States forever changed. But out of the ashes of conflict came a new understanding, a renewed commitment to unity and peace. As the nation moves forward, it carries with it the lessons of the past, determined never to repeat the mistakes that led to such a devastating conflict. Never forget, always move forward. Join us in reflecting on this journey by leaving a comment, liking and subscribing to the channel. Be part of the conversation as we move forward from the story's final chapter.